This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, from today in the evening session, we will be talking about generic topics which are needed, which are important for you to clear your interviews and for you to work successfully in your job profiles. Okay, this is different discussions that we are going to have apart from our regular session in the morning. Okay, whatever we are doing in the morning session, that will be continued only in the morning. In the evening session, this will be a different discussion altogether. Clear?
Yeah, sure, Ajay.
Yeah. Now let's try to write down some basic business process scenarios. So slowly we will start to understand different business processes scenarios and how we have to do it in SAP. Tomorrow when you're attending interviews, these are the most likely questions that you're supposed to be asked or that you can expect. Let me put different points. So I will be starting from accounts payable. Okay, let's begin from accounts payable. This is one of the areas which is most commonly asked, most commonly touched in your interviews. So on these areas, if anybody had already attended interviews, if you have faced any questions on these areas, you can put, we will list out all the questions in our Excel sheet and we will practically do all these points on the system. Okay, so first, if we talk about accounts payable, before you get into business processes scenarios in accounts payable, on any topic that we are talking about, first let's ensure that we are aware of the basic business process of it in general and how this business process is used in SAP as a standard process. When we talk about standard process, without any customization, the standard process, you go and talk to anybody, talk anywhere, everybody will be able to say, yes, whatever you said is correct. That is your standard business process. First, you have to focus on this standard business process of any part. If you're talking about accounts payable part or accounts receivable, whatever it is, you have to ensure that you are able to talk confidently on the standard business process. Now here, if we talk about accounts payable, the moment we talk about accounts payable, first thing that comes in our mind is it is all about, what is it all about? We are talking about whom if you are talking about accounts payable?
Vendor related.
We are talking about vendors. When you're talking about vendors, make sure what are the alternative names for vendor. Not everybody will call as a vendor. What are the other names?
Business partner,
Vendor,
supplier,
okay. Business partner, correct.
supplier,
Supplier,
Yeah,
next.
service partner something, I think.
Service provider, okay. Service partner,
consulting partner,
consulting partner, okay. If you talk about buyer and seller, who is your vendor, buyer or seller?
seller,
Seller. Seller.
Seller is your vendor. Any other points to be included in this?
Seller or supplier is the same, right? Sir?
Same.
creditors,
Now, whatever the names we are writing, these are all the same. It's all about accounts payable only, but in different scenarios, in different places, the accounts payable may be represented to account about vendor, business partner, supplier, service provider, consulting partner, or seller. But we are not supposed to get confused. Okay, that is why we are trying to list out all the possible names so that we will be clear. Let's say these are all the different names that we are going to use in accounts payable. Now, in accounts payable, majorly what we are going to do, what is it all about? what are we going to do in accounts payable?
We will
To
do
use the
payment.
sum of related tranche.
We are going to purchase from the vendor and we are going to make payment to the vendor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. So that is why we call this accounts payable as P2P cycle. When you talk about P2P cycle, we are talking about what? Procurement to payment. Until you procure a material or until you procure a service, until you release the payment to the supplier, whatever is happening is part of your accounts payable. In other words, anywhere you find vendor, blindly mark it as accounts payable. Okay, you see vendor name or any other term here except a business partner, because business partner is used in supplier scenario also. Okay, so wherever in general you find vendor or supplier, blindly fix in your mind that this is related to accounts payable module. From your finance, this is related to AP module. Now, if you know that there is something called P2P cycle. Now, when you talk about P2P cycle, we are talking about normal purchases or the PO related purchases.
Material related, PO related.
We were related.
Right? Whenever we talk about P2P cycle, majorly we will be talking about PO related or purchase order related transactions. Now, here, if you talk about accounts payable, this accounts payable is of two categories. One is accounts payable without purchase order. Second one is accounts payable with purchase order. Now, slowly we have to understand the difference between what is accounts payable without purchase order, what is accounts payable with purchase order. Now, when you talk about accounts payable without purchase order, this accounts payable without purchase order is coming from FI module or MM module.
Coming from FI model.
This is direct
Expenses.
FI module. Okay, accounts payable without purchase order is a direct FI module. On the other side, if you talk about accounts payable with purchase order, what about this? Is this direct FI module or this is related to MM module?
This
MM
is
model.
related to model.
MM model.
Right? So this is related to MM module and integrated to FI module. Is this correct?
Yes, sir.
Right, accounts payable with purchase order. This is related to MM module, but it is integrated to FI module. Now, any interview that you face, you will get a question called FIMM integration.
Yes, sir.
Right, everybody will ask you FIMM integration. When somebody is asking you FIMM integration, these points that we are going to discuss are going to be helpful for you to discuss. Now, you have to specifically mention about accounts payable with purchase order. In short, MM integration with FI, accounts payable module without purchase order, which is directly related to your FI, wherein no purchase order, no material is involved. If you are talking about accounts payable, whether it is with purchase order or without purchase order, to handle these two, we need vendor master record,
Yes, sir.
right? Whether I want to use my accounts payable with FI or with integration from EMM, I need to have vendor master first. Now, for you to create vendor master, there must be some basic setup for accounts payable. right? So now you have to know about baseline configuration in accounts payable. What is the baseline configuration which we are going to do to set up basic accounts payable module? Now in basic accounts payable module, what you are going to do? You are going to create
Account.
a vendor, you are going to create an invoice to the vendor, you will be creating returns to the vendor, you will be making advance payments to the vendor, you will be making your final payments to the vendor. In order to do or in order to perform these basic transactions, we must create a vendor master. Before you create a vendor master, before you post any transactions, there must be AP module implemented. When we say AP module implemented, we mean basic configuration for accounts payable has been defined. Now, how you are going to define this basic accounts payable in any project? Is it that I know how to create vendor account group, how to create number range, I know the T code? Is it the similar way that we are going to work in a project? This is not the way you are going to work. So what you have to do, assume that first we will talk about finance related accounts payable. Let's talk exclusively related to finance. Let's say you have been assigned to work on this accounts payable project, or you have been assigned to configure accounts payable business process in one of the clients. Now what you are going to do, you are not directly going to log into the system, start configuring account groups and all. Before you do it, first you have to understand the business requirement, business process of your current client, whoever you are going to work for. Those who are not talking can go on mute, please. Okay, we have to understand the current client business process with respect to accounts payable. So when you're talking about accounts payable, it is all about procurement till payment. In short, how you are going to create your vendor masters. First point that you'll have to remember is, now in any process we have written some data flow. First one is your business requirement. Based on the business requirement, we will be doing configuration. Based on the configuration, you will set up master data. Based on the master data, we will be posting or creating transaction data. Based on the transaction data, we will be extracting various reports. This is basic data flow in any consulting thing. So when we are talking about any accounting related process, any business process, for example, we are talking about accounts payable. First thing, you have to gather the business requirement. Okay, business requirement and configuration is from your side. And how you are going to gather the business requirement? Your business requirement is all about how master data is created or managed, how your transactions are created or managed, how your reports are generated. In short, when you're talking about any business requirement gathering on any particular topic, if you're not sure what is business requirement, how to understand the business requirement, first try to think from master data point of view. If you are talking about accounts payable, in accounts payable, what is the master data that we have to create? We have to create vendor master record in accounts payable, right? We need to create vendor master data. When we know that we have to create vendor master data in accounts payable, you have to understand how your client is currently managing their vendor master records. First point, how they are creating vendor masters. Are they directly creating in the system, or do they have any approval process, or do they have any workflow mechanism currently set up in their existing system? First point that you have to understand how they are creating vendors, because there will be a process for creating any vendor in any organization. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
right? So vendor is one of the sensitive master records in finance. Just like that, we cannot create any vendor master data, because to a vendor you are going to make the payment. Wherever company is going to make the payment, they have to validate, ensure that the data of your supplier is created correctly, is thoroughly validated and verified. Now let's say to create vendor master data, there is some new vendor approval form is to be created. Based on the new vendor approval form, it will be approved by the procurement team or finance team, somebody. Once everybody has approved, a vendor master record will be created in system. Now, while creating this vendor master record in the system, how you are going to classify your vendors? Because your vendors is P&L account or balance sheet account.
and the
Balance sheet
balance
account.
sheet.
Vendor is a balance sheet account, right? Now, when we know that vendor is a balance sheet account, we have to understand how we are going to represent our vendors in our balance sheet. Where are we going to represent these vendors in our balance sheet, asset or liability?
Liability.
Vendors we are going to represent in, let's say, balance sheet. I'll write only liabilities here. That is what we are concerned about. In balance sheet, your vendor is part of liability. How you are going to write vendors in the balance sheet liabilities? Are you going to write all the vendor names?
No, sir. Account payable.
No. Through recon account.
We are not, right? We are not going to write all the supplier names or all the vendor names in the balance sheet liabilities. Instead, you will be classifying your vendors into different categorization. If you see, while academics, we would have seen sundry creditors. Anybody remember this?
Yes, sir. When
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
creating
sir.
a vendor master, we have to assign.
Alright, when we talk about sundry creditors, we mean that multiple creditors or multiple suppliers. Instead of giving a name, you are giving sundry creditors, which represents all creditors. Now, this creditor, I think we have not written here. Let me add creditor here. Creditor. Okay. You will put sundry creditors. Normally, we are not going to put sundry creditors. Instead, in your organization balance sheet, under liabilities side, you are going to put accounts payable, followed by the nature of this liability or nature of the supplier. Let's say local, and I may say accounts payable imports. I may say accounts payable
Trade payables.
employees. I may say accounts payable one time, accounts payable intra-company. I may say
Accounts.
accounts payable intercompany. Assume that in your current client, this is how they are representing their balance sheet accounts payable under liabilities. Now, by looking at this, what you have to understand, your vendor is classifying vendors into, sorry, your client is classifying accounts payable into different classifications. Please go on mute if you're not talking. Okay. Let's say our client is classifying vendors like this. In their balance sheet, this is how their supplier or their liabilities are represented. Now, when they come to SAP, they want to see the similar setup. They don't want to change their business process for the reason that they are getting into SAP. In fact, they want to make it better. They want to make it more, more simple, more reachable to everybody. Currently, they may not have provisions, flexibility to give the detailed breakup or detailed analysis of their accounts payable. When they get into SAP, they will be having different expectations. They may say that in our existing system we are able to do all this, why not in SAP? So you have to be very careful when you're talking to your client, when you're gathering the requirement, when you're understanding the other person's business process. Do not interrupt or do not judge just by talking at first instance. Whatever they are telling, just listen to them patiently, list out, and then have your thorough understanding. Based on that only you try to talk back. Okay, upfront, do not tell why you are using like this, why not like that. Do not get into such kind of a discussion with any client in the beginning. First, let your client talk, let them explain their business process. You try to understand their existing business process and then try to understand this business process from SAP point of view. Whether you have standard provisions to accommodate all these requirements or not. If yes, it is well and good. If not, you have to see how you can achieve this, how you can meet this business requirement. So that is what you'll have to do. For us to do all these things, before you getting into SAP, you need to have a basic understanding about your client business process. Without which, if you straight away get into SAP, start configuring the things, we will not be able to understand accounts payable from business process point of view. Okay. Now, assuming that I'm talking with the client or I'm your client, I'm giving you the requirement. I will tell that we will create vendor master data. What kind of a transactions are you going to do with your vendors? Now you may be also asking, how many vendors do you have currently? I say that currently we have around 2000 vendors. Okay, I'm telling that currently we have around 2000 vendors. You may ask me another question, how frequently you will get new vendor creation request? Which means, do you create new vendors on a daily basis or on weekly basis? This is point number one. Point number two, in a month, how many vendors you will be creating? Okay, I say that in a month, we will be creating around some 10 vendors, some 20 vendors. But they will not tell you it depends. They will never tell you that it depends, but they will give you an approximate number. On an average, let's say there will be around 20 or 50 new vendor requests coming in a month, on an average. Based on that, you will come to know the volume of their business process, their business transactions. Once you understand that, okay, these are the classifications of their vendors and they are going to have around 50 vendors added in every month. Okay, fine. Now, how about your transactions? What kind of a transactions are you going to do with these vendors? Now, currently we are talking only with respect to finance related accounts payable. We are not going to talk about anything connected to purchase order. That we will talk separately once we are clear with this. Okay, let's say from your vendor, you are going to do transactions like purchase invoices. You are going to create purchases for which you will record the invoices in the system, and you may have credit memos, in short, returns. And you may also tell there will be advance payments to the vendors or down payments to the vendors. I may also tell that we will have normal payments. Instead of normal payment, I'll only put payments. Okay, these are the standard ones. Now I have told you that what kind of a transactions we are going to do with the suppliers. I have told we are going to do purchase invoices, we are going to record credit memos, in short purchase returns, advance payments will also be made, and the payments will be made as usual for settling these invoices. How you are making the reports in your vendors? What kind of reports are you preparing for your accounts payable or for your vendor? Let's say vendor outstanding reports. At each vendor wise, what is the outstanding, how many invoices we've created, how many payments we have made. We want to know the history of a particular vendor based on the date wise or whatever. Next, I'll say vendor balance report. If I want to look at what is the current outstanding of a particular vendor, what is the balance? I don't want to see how many invoices are outstanding, but I only want to see for all of my vendors, what is the current outstanding. I may be looking at that vendor. I may also say that AP aging reports. Okay, what is the age of my payables? So I will be using aging report. I may also need payment reports if I want to see the payment track of a particular vendor. For a particular vendor from this time period to this time period, let's say in the last 6 months, what is the payment that we have made to a particular supplier? We want such kind of reports. And they might also say vendor master data reports. Like we want to see how many vendors are there. And they may also say that VAT reports. Okay, in short, tax reports. What is the tax that we have paid to the suppliers? They might say these are all the transactions reports that we are currently using in our accounts payable. Now, considering all these points, you have to understand at very high level, okay, this is how you're doing. You're doing all the standard business process only. You are creating vendor manually. On an average, you will have 50 vendor masters created in a month. Fine. And you are going to create invoices. How many purchases you are going to have in a month? If I say that we will be having around 500 purchases in a month. In short, 500 bills we will receive on an average per month. Okay. And how many returns will be there? I may say it may depends, maybe 5% of my purchases may be returned or 2% of my purchases may be returned. Advances. Do you pay advance to all the vendors or for selected vendors or in any specific condition you are going to pay the advances? So your client will tell you, no, 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 only for selected vendors. In certain situations, we will be paying advances. How are you tracking your advances currently? Is everything advanced to you or you have any classification on advances? Okay. And they will tell, okay, no, no, we are not classifying advances into different categories. We treat everything as advance only. Fine. Then how you are going to make the payment? When you are making the payment, what is the payment methods you are using? How you are going to settle your payments? Are you going to issue cash to the supplier or are you going to settle with bank payments by using checks or by using account transfer? These points you'll have to understand. When you pull out the vendor outstanding report, what exactly you are looking from these vendor outstanding reports in your current system? What information is available and for what purpose you are using this? They will tell this information is going to be updated or this information we will take from this vendor line item report. Based on that, we will do the various reconciliations. We will verify the statement from the vendor. We will also verify our line item report. We will verify whether all the invoices that are outstanding from the vendor statement are they outstanding from my statement also or not. Okay, likewise, on every point, you must be in a position to at least talk for 1 or 2 minutes, or at least try to gather some more information, which is always going to help you in understanding the process, defining, configuring in a better way. Now, vendor balance report. When you say vendor balance report, are you going to check all the vendor balances in one go, or one by one you are going to check? Will anybody check one by one? Nobody will check. If you say that you have around 1000 vendors, I want one single report showing me all 1000 vendor outstanding. Okay, requirement is clear, you understood, fine. Next you are talking about aging report. How you are calculating aging? So you have to ask how you are calculating aging, from what date you are calculating. Are you calculating from invoice date or are you calculating from due date? Or do you have any specific categorization in these scenarios? We will be calculating aging from the due date. In the other scenarios, we will be calculating the aging from document date. Okay, if these points that you have got, you understood from the client, then you have to sit and list out, okay, this is the business process that your client is going ahead, and you have to draft this business process on the SAP system. Now you are going to have the standard configuration process of your accounts payable. Look at the process that you have understood from the client. Try to match. It will be straightforward. More or less, it will be straightforward, except in your reporting. Okay. Yes, Ravi, you had some question.
Thank you, Ajay. I have a couple of questions. Number one, how the one-time vendor is different from the normal vendor? And in continuation to that, if I create a one-time vendor, that means I can do only a business with that vendor for only one time. That's my first question. Second question is, what is that intra-company vendors? I can understand what is intercompany vendors. In what situation will go for intra-company vendors? Thank you.
Okay. Let's say if you talk about one-time vendor. Now, there may be certain purchases we will be doing at one time. When you do a purchase, you know that this is supplier. Any purchase that you make, initially you are going to receive a bill. Now, this bill, by looking at the bill, you come to know that this is a purchase made from a local shop. On an emergency case or in some exceptional condition, you've purchased from a local supplier or from any vendor for which you do not want to create a master record, because it's not a recurring transaction, it's not a recurring business that you are going to deal with. This is supplier. It's a very rare case. You may do business again, you may not do business again, which we are not aware. So in order to create multiple vendor accounts, which will lead to a lot of messy things in your reconciliation, what we will do, we will create a category called one time vendor. When you select this one time vendor category, at the time of creating the transaction, you will have to enter the vendor master data. The moment you put your vendor account number, for one time vendor, there will be only one supplier code, which can be used for different suppliers at the time of a transaction posting, which means at the time of posting the invoice, the moment you put this one time supplier code and hit enter, it will give a pop-up screen wherein you have to give vendor name and address. Okay, for this particular transaction, system will display you this transaction belongs to this vendor. Similarly, in one-time vendor account, I can create 10 different supplier transactions with 10 different supplier details. Okay, on the other side, if you talk about intercompany, assuming I have two company codes, I have D1 and I have DE20. If I am buying or selling from DE1 to DE20 or DE20 to DE10, this we call it as intercompany transaction, because it's a transaction between two different company codes, two different legal entities. Now on the other side, within DE10, within my company code, I may have different branches or departments. Right? If I have different departments or different divisions within my organization, I may be having purchases within the department. If I am purchasing within the department from, let's say, finance division is billing your logistics division, or logistics division is billing to your HR division. In such cases, you will be talking about intra-company related supplier, because you are going to create the other division as your intra-company division, or inter-department divisions, or inter-department companies. Now, for this, the reason why we create these two separately, if you talk about accounts payable intercompany, these are taxable. And if you're talking about accounts payable intra-company, these are non-taxable. Okay, these are non-taxable, but you want to see that I have transferred some material or some service from one department to the other department. I will be recording the transaction, but I will not be having any monetary settlement. I am only going to offset with each other. Clear?
Thank you, Ajay. Clear.
Yeah. All right. So let's assume that we have understood this process from the client. now we have to set up this business process in SAP system. Now, after knowing these points only, we have to look at the configuration of accounts payable in SAP. Now, when you do the configuration steps in SAP, now let me come down. So, AP config, I'll put in ECC, I'll put AP config in S4 HANA. Now, this treatment in ECC, this treatment in S4 HANA has slight changes. Now, first let us write the configuration steps in ECC. When we are moving from ECC to S4 HANA, the configuration that you are doing in ECC remains as it is in S4 HANA with additional settings. Now, in ECC, to create the accounts payable functionality, to enable the basic accounts payable functionality, first what we need to do, we need to create vendor account groups. Once vendor account groups are created, second one, we need to create vendor account group number ranges. After creating number ranges, we have to assign number ranges to account groups. These are your three basic configurations from SAP ECC with respect to accounts payable. Apart from this, you need to add one more setting as part of your AP basic configuration or baseline configuration, which is your tolerance group for vendors. Now this tolerance group we will be defining as part of a baseline configuration, but in case if somebody is asking you, include this also in this. Okay, tolerance group for vendors. These four are your configuration steps. After defining these four configuration steps, you will have to, next what we need to do after defining these four steps, we have to create accounts payable reconciliation GLs. You'll have to create accounts payable reconciliation GL accounts. After creating accounts payable reconciliation GL accounts, next thing you need to create vendor master data. After creating vendor master data, you are good to create post vendor transactions, and then you can generate vendor reports. Is this the correct flow or anything we are missing? From ECC point of view, are we missing any point? If yes, you can add.
Reconciliation account.
Reconciliation account is added here, point number 5.
Okay.
Okay, in short, if we revisit this, first you need to create vendor account group. For you to create vendor accounts group, you are going to look at your vendor balance sheet representation, how your vendors are represented in your balance sheet. Accordingly, you are going to decide how many account groups we are going to create. After that, you will have to decide a number range, number sequence for identifying each category of a vendor. If you're talking about local vendor, import vendor, employee vendor, one-time vendor, intra-company vendor, or inter-company vendor, how do I segregate? By looking at the vendor code. By looking at the vendor name, I may not be able to differentiate whether this is local vendor or import vendor or any other category of vendor. Instead, I would be more interested in identifying a numbering sequence which will help me understand, okay, if any vendor starting from 1 series is a local vendor, any vendor starting from 2 series is an import vendor, Any vendor starting from 3 series is my employee vendor. Likewise, we need to freeze a logic based on which your vendor code is created and based on which your vendor account group is identified. Once you identify this, next thing you'll have to create one tolerance group for vendors. This is part of your basic baseline configuration for your company code. If you do not maintain this setting, tolerance group for vendor, if it is not maintained, system is not going to allow us to create any transaction in the vendor account. Okay, for us to create any transaction in vendor account, this tolerance group for vendor is a must. After creating these four are part of your configuration steps. Point number 5, point number 6 is your master data. Okay, these four are your configs. These four are configs. These two are your masters, and this is your transaction, and this is your report. And by looking at all these transactions, make sure you are able to segregate what is what. Don't assume everything is configuration, because it is practically not. Right? Account group creation is part of config, number range is part of config, assignment is part of config, tolerance group is part of config, but GL creation is part of master data, vendor creation is part of master data, post vendor transaction is part of your transactioning, and generate vendor report is part of your reporting. So make sure even if somebody is asking you, you have clear definition with you. Otherwise, we will end up getting into trouble. If you tell all this as part of your AP baseline configuration, you may get a cross question: is creation of vendor accounts payable GL account or creation of vendor master data part of config? This is actually not, but make sure when you are explaining, you are clear with what you are talking. In case if you talk something wrong, make sure you are able to rectify it immediately.
Hello.
Now, having seen, yes.
Sir, payment terms is also there, right?
That we will
Without
be
payment terms, we
talking.
can't post a transaction, right?
You can post that. We will see as part of different scenarios.
Okay.
Okay, payment terms, payment methods, mode of payment, all these things we will see as a different this one.
Okay.
Okay. Now next one, from the S4 HANA point of view, what will be there? Now point number 1 that you'll have to remember, from accounts payable ECC to accounts payable S4 HANA, whatever we are doing in ECC, we will be doing exactly the same in S4 HANA without any change. In short, whatever I have listed here, I'll simply copy paste here. Clear? Whatever I have given here, I'm simply copy pasting this information here, which means whatever we are doing on ECC, we are doing exactly the same on S4 HANA with some additional settings. What are those additional settings that we will have to do with respect to accounts payable in S4 HANA?
We need to create the BP, business partner.
We need to create BP, correct. So let me add point number 5 here. Business partner account group. Next,
Business partner number range.
business partner
Customer vendor integration.
number ranges. Here it is account group and number range assignment. So in short, we have to switch these two. Okay, so this will become your point number 5. This will become your point number 6. After that, point number 7 will be
CBI.
customer and vendor integration. This is called as CVI. Sorry, CVI. Now this I'll change this as step number 8. This will be 9 and this will be 10 and this is your 11. These 4 are also configurations, right? In fact, these are all your configurations. These 2 are master data. Are we going to create vendor master data or business partner master data? Which master data are we going to create in S/4HANA? Vendor or BP or BP vendor?
BP, sir.
Alright. So here you'll have to put create business partner vendor master data. Now, if you look at these 2 together now, if you look at these 2 together, do you find any major differences between these 2?
Sir, why BP introduced?
Sorry,
Sir, why
BP
BP?
we will be using in S/4HANA to create one master record for one person or for one organization, and you will be extending different roles based on the nature of transaction. Now in ECC, what you will do, let's say I am the person who is dealing business with you. Now, if I'm doing business with you, I may be purchasing from you, I may be selling to you. According to this situation, I am becoming a customer to you, I am also becoming a vendor to you. In ECC, what you need to do, you have to create 2 master records for me. Vendor master record for me is different, customer master record for me is different.
Yes.
Alright. In S/4HANA,
Yes.
it is not like that. I am the one person who is doing business with you. So you call me as business partner. If you are going to do purchasing from me, I am going to become a supplier to you or vendor to you. If you are purchasing from me.
Okay, we can extend.
No, if you are purchasing from me, what I am to you, vendor or customer? If you are purchasing from me, let's say you are purchasing from me, I become a vendor to you. Before you create me as a vendor or before you create me as a customer, first thing in S/4HANA, you have to create me as a business partner. When you're creating me as a business partner, what you're going to do, you're only going to update my name and my address, my bank account information, my tax identification number, only the basic information about me or an organization based on the nature of a transaction that you're going to do with this business partner. If you are going to purchase from this business partner, you are going to assign a vendor role to the business partner. Your business partner will become a vendor only when you assign vendor role to the business partner. Now, when you're assigning a vendor role to the business partner, it again has 2 classifications. What kind of purchases are you making? Are you making purchase order related purchase or without purchase order, direct purchases? If you are going to make purchase order related purchases, you have to maintain you have to maintain 2 roles assigned to the business partner. If you are going to do a direct purchase without any purchase order, you need to create only a single role. Okay, so your business partner is going to be treated in different ways based on the nature of a transaction that you are going to deal with the person or the organization. In short, one master record, multiple functionalities. multiple business transactions. Clear?
Clear.
Yep. Now, looking at these 2 points, accounts payable configuration in ECC, accounts payable configuration in S/4HANA, except the 3 points that I am highlighting in yellow now. Except the 3 points that I highlighted in yellow, do you find any difference?
No.
There is no difference from ECC to S/4HANA. The only change, the only difference that you will see is the business partner functionality. You have to understand how you are going to create business partner account groups, business partner number ranges, how you are going to do customer vendor integration. If you're talking about business partner number range, if you're talking about business partner account group and number range, before talking to this, you have to understand customer vendor integration or CVI. When we talk about customer vendor integration or CVI, this is related to one person doing multiple businesses. Let's say I am a supplier to you, I am also a customer to you. In short, I am your customer, I am your vendor also. How you wanted to map me as a customer, as a vendor? You have two options. Let's say Mr. Raju, and you have a company called Dell India Limited. Now to Dell India Limited, what Raju is doing? Raju is supplying goods. Raju is also buying goods. In short, he is buying and selling. When he is supplying, Raju is becoming a vendor. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, no? Now when Raju
Yes.
is buying, he
Yes.
is becoming a customer.
Yes, sir.
Right? Before
Yes.
Raju is buying and selling, Raju is doing business with Dell. What
Yes.
kind of a
Yes.
business is a secondary? Whether he is buying or he is selling is a second option in S/4HANA. If you are trying to do a business, if you are entering into a business contract with any person or with any organization, you are going to treat Mr. Raju as business partner first. Mr. Raju is going to become business partner. Now, when I say business partner, I will tell Raju business partner code is, let's say, 445566. This is the code for Mr. Raju as business partner. Now, tomorrow I have decided that I am going to purchase something from Raju. If I create only the business partner, I cannot do a purchasing transaction. For me to do purchasing transaction, I need to extend Raju as vendor, or I need to assign Raju to the business partner purchasing roles. Now for that, what I need to do, I will take Mr. Raju as vendor. Now here system needs one number. What number do you want? Question number 1. Which number do you want to assign to the Raju? Point number 1, option number 1, same number as business partner. Now option number 2, different number from business partner. Okay, option number 1, I can have the same number to the vendor also. Option number 2, I can have a different number to vendor. Clear? If I am opting
Yes.
option number 1, my BP and vendor will have the same code. If I'm opting option number 2, business partner code is different, vendor code is different. Now one master is having 2 codes here. Right? If I go with option number 1, same. So this will become the same. If I go with option number 2, this may be some other number. Now, which option is more ideal for you to identify? Option number 1, option number 2. Same number or different number?
Option number 1.
Option number 1.
Option number 1, same number if you are going to have for the business partner, and for the vendor it is easy for you to identify because everywhere you are talking about Raju, you are talking about the same code. Otherwise, Raju as a business partner is one number, Raju as a vendor is another number. This kind of numbering will create unnecessary confusion, which we do not recommend. Now, option number 2 is not used, only option number 1 is used. Now, if you want to use option number 1, your business partner code and your vendor code are same. If you want to use this option, you have to define this setting. What setting?
Vendor account
Customer
group number
and
should be external.
correct. You have to define this setting called customer and vendor integration. This customer and vendor integration will ensure that your vendor number and your business partner number and your customer number are the same. Tomorrow, if you create same Raju as customer, you want to have the same code here also. Here also same options. Here also you will have same options. Option number 1, you can have same code. Option number 2, I can have another code. So using option number 1 is more easier, or using option number 2 is easier?
One is
1.
easier.
Right?
Option number
Using
1.
option number 1, where you are going to have same number for all the business transactions related to Mr. Raju is identical, is more comfortable, is more easier. Now to achieve this, you will have to do a setting called CVI, customer vendor integration. When you do this customer vendor integration, it is all about numbering. Business partner has one number, your vendor has another number, customer has another number. If we go back to the settings of S4HANA, here you are defining number ranges for vendor, here you are defining number ranges for business partner. Step number 2 and step number 5, at these two positions we are creating number ranges.
Yes, sir.
Now for
Yes.
us to have the same number, we have to ensure your business partner numbering series and your vendor numbering series are same. These two numberings are same, and one number should be external, the other number should be internal. This is what you are going to define in your customer vendor integration. Whether you want to generate
Sir, you are not audible, sir. Hello?
You lost my voice in between?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, for us to create vendor account number ranges and BP account number ranges, we need to follow one logic. You have to ensure your vendor account number ranges and BP account number ranges are in sync. When I say they are in sync, you have to ensure your vendor account number ranges and your BP account number ranges are same. When you are creating two number ranges as the same, one must be internal and the other one must be external. Which number should be internal? Which number should be external?
BP should be internal, vendor should be external.
Correct. So to achieve this, you need to make sure BP is internal number range and your vendor will be external number range. Is this correct? Right? You will be able to do CVI or customer vendor integration only when you define your vendor number ranges and your BP number ranges in this fashion. And when somebody wants to ask you all these points, this is what they expect from you. If somebody is asking you what is a CVI, customer vendor integration, you will have to explain all this. If you maintain CVI, if you don't maintain CVI, what will happen? Why do you recommend option number 1? Why not option number 2? For you to generate the same number for both BP and vendor, what settings are you doing? Which number you are going to create as external? Which number you are going to create as internal? So these points they expect you to tell in the exact way how these are created in any project. If you tell the same points, you will not get any cross questions. But in case if you get confused, if you are telling in something different way, so you may end up getting different cross questions. Why like this? Why not like that? Clear? Now look at this and try to check if you are clear with these configuration steps alone. Are these confusing or easier?
Easy.
Right, so we are not writing any transaction code, nothing here. You only have to remember what you have to do. That is the first point that you have to remember. Don't put focus on your T code, because tomorrow even if somebody is asking you what is the configuration for accounts payable, they don't expect you to tell the T codes. They will not expect you to tell the T code, vendor account group you create in OBD2, OBD3, number range XKN1. Nobody wants it. Go in a flow and explain all these points. That is what they want from you. Tell the T code only if they ask what is the T code for this. Otherwise, don't tell the T code. It's not required. You will have to mention the transaction codes where you are maintaining account determination related settings, especially those T codes they are more interested in. Otherwise, nobody cares about your T codes. Wherever you are maintaining GL account numbers as part of your configuration, let's say if you are creating a discount, how discount GL account is coming. For discount GL account to be determined, you need to maintain some setting called account determination, in which T code you are going to update or maintain the GL account. Such kind of a things is where you have to specifically talk about the transaction code, if possible table also. Otherwise not required. Unless they ask, you don't need to inform or you don't need to mention the transaction codes, because your interviewer focus is not on your T codes. That point you'll have to keep in your mind. Okay, now assuming this is the baseline configuration that we are doing in terms of your basic accounts payable from finance point of view, only the FI point of view. Once these configurations are done, you will have transactions here. Transactions in accounts payable, in short FI module. Because accounts payable also comes from your MA module, there your accounting entries will be different. So you have to remember this separately right from the beginning. You need to have clear differentiation. Now first one, when you do from any vendor, what you are going to do? Vendor invoice or purchase. Is this correct? First thing is your vendor invoice or vendor purchase. When you do vendor invoice or when you do a vendor purchase, what will be the accounting entry?
Purchase account data to vendor account.
Purchase account data to vendor account. But when you are learning, when you are trying to understand, never follow this approach. Never write purchase account debit, vendor account credit. Nobody writes purchase account in any real environment. You will not search the correct. You'll have to specifically mention which purchase instead of only purchase. So here, if you take an example, let's say Dell purchased pantry items, or instead of pantry, I'll say stationery items from DMart for 8,000 INR. Assume that this is your purchase that you have made from DMart, no tax, nothing is included. Just take this as a simple transaction. Now, for you to record this accounting entry, what will you be writing?
Stationary account debit, DMart credits.
So you'll have to debit, stationery will be debit, and DMart will be credit. And you're going to put 8,000 on the debit side, 8,000 on the credit side. Where is your vendor? Debit side or
On
credit
credit
side?
side. Credit side.
Vendor is on credit side. Now your accounts payable is liability, correct?
Yes, sir.
Liability always shows credit balance. Now your vendor account must show a credit balance. There are some exceptions. If you have only advance made or only credit memo posted, except in these two, your vendor account is supposed to show a credit balance. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
If your vendor account has only advance transaction or your vendor account has only the credit memo transaction, only in these two exceptions, your vendor account is supposed to show a credit balance. Now, while posting the entry, pay attention to your vendor account, where your vendor account is hitting, whether it is hitting to the debit side or to the credit side. Now, overall, when you look at any vendor account balance, you are supposed to show a negative balance because vendor is always accounts payable. Accounts payable is part of liability. Liability shows a credit balance. Your vendor account, when you open, you must see a negative number. No surprise, you may get a question. Which balance is your vendor should have ideally? Your vendor should ideally have a debit balance or a credit balance.
Credit balance.
Credit balance.
Your vendor is supposed to have a credit balance. Now, this is your purchase transaction when you do from a vendor. Let's say second one I'll put as, I'll take these points here. This is your purchase returns or vendor credit memo. let's say Dell returned stationery items to DMart for, let's say, 1,500. What will be the accounting entry in this case?
DMart account debit to stationery return.
DMart account data to stationery account.
DMart will be debit in this case. Stationery will be credit in this case. I'll put 1,500 on the debit side, 1,500 on the credit side. Here, what is happening to your vendor, debit or credit?
Debit.
Now, just now we mentioned that liability always shows a credit balance. Vendor account must show a credit balance. We have mentioned point clearly, vendor account must show a credit balance, not vendor transaction. Am I correct?
Yes.
This is your vendor transaction. If I do the overall calculation for my vendor, if I prepare my vendor account, vendor is nothing but your DMart. If I prepare my DMart account, I'll have debit, I'll have credit. How much is posted to the credit side in the DMart account?
8,000.
8,000 is posted on the credit side. How much is posted on the debit side? 1,500.
1,500.
Yes.
Take this 1,500 on the debit side. Do the total. Which side is more, debit, credit?
Credit.
If credit side is more than debit side, your account has credit balance or debit balance?
Credit balance.
If your credit side is more, it shows credit balance. If your debit side is more, it shows debit balance. Now, what is the credit balance? What is the balancing figure?
6,500.
6,500. If I put 6,500, is my vendor account matching? Now, this 6,500 becomes your liability. What is your vendor liability?
6,500.
6,500. The 6,500 is a positive number or a negative number? Debit or credit balance?
It's credit balance.
Negative number.
It's a credit balance. It's a negative number. Now, is this tallying with this statement? These three statements?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Clear? Now, if these points are not clear, you will not be able to understand vendor account reports, vendor account balances, vendor aging, vendor transactions on SAP. If these points are clear, you will not find any difficulty when you see it on the SAP. Same thing you are going to see in the SAP, same transaction you are going to post in SAP, same report you are going to pull from SAP. SAP will also show you 6,500 negative number. Yep. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Representation in SAP may be different, but accounting in SAP is the same. Logic remains the same, calculation remains the same, your understanding remains the same. It's only the Excel sheet becomes an SAP. Otherwise, there is no difference. Okay, let's say this is my second. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, 8,000 should be on the debit side or on the credit side, sir?
Credit side. If you look at the accounting entry, what did you do to this 8,000, debit or credit? In
sorry,
this
sir, I didn't
purchase
get you.
account. Okay.
Yes.
If you see this first entry, vendor purchase or vendor invoice, accounting entry we have written is stationery account debit, DMart account credit.
Right.
Now, when you are preparing DMart account, in short, when you are looking at vendor account, in vendor account, where is 8,000, debit side or credit side?
Credit side.
If your accounting entry has a credit record, if your accounting entry has a credit record in the vendor account, in your vendor account, it will have a credit side, credit balance. If you see this accounting entry, DMart credit 8,000. If you see this ledger account, DMart credit 8,000. Clear?
Okay, okay,
Here I'll
okay,
put
okay. In this way.
DMart credit 8,000, DMart credit 8,000. If I look at my second transaction, DMart debit 1500. Here also DMart debit 1500. Am I clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now,
Yes, sir.
let me put the third transaction. Assume that we have made an advance payment. Let's say Dell paid advance payment of 3,000 to DMart. Dell paid advance payment of 3,000 to DMart. Now, for time being, let's assume this advance is paid in cash or bank. Now, our focus is to check the vendor account. Ignore how it is paid. Now, you have to slowly start understanding how to look at the transaction. Now, the whole idea of looking at this is to check what is happening in your vendor account. Correct? What we're trying to do is to understand what is happening with your vendor account. Now, whatever you are posting to offset your vendor account, just ignore it. Whether you are posting to the customer account or you are posting it to cash account, bank account, ignore it. Make sure you are taking a valid account. Your idea, your intention is only to bring a transaction of advance into vendor statement or into vendor account. Now, for this, to be very specific, advance cash payment I'll put. Okay. What will be the accounting entry for this?
Advance
DMart account debit,
account
cash account
debit.
credit.
Advance to DMart account debit to bank account.
This is third scenario. Vendor advance payment. Now here DMart debit and cash credit, because we are mentioning cash payment. Since we are mentioning a cash payment, you'll have to put cash account on the credit side. Now I'll put 3,000 on the debit side, 3,000 on the credit side. Now where is your vendor here? Debit, credit?
Debit.
Debit. Now if I look at the same account again, I'll remove it. Now earlier this become your liability. Now after making an advance payment of 3,000, where should I put this advance payment?
Debit side.
Debit side. Debit side.
It should be debit or credit?
Debit.
Simple. Look at the accounting entry. DMart debit 3,000. Go to DMart account. DMart debit 3,000. Clear? If your accounting entry shows debit, put on the debit side in your vendor account. Now after making this vendor payment of 3,000, what will be the liability now? 8,000 credit balance, 4,500. 3,500. Now this 3,500 is your liability. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now if I want to clear my liability, what is your current outstanding of the vendor account?
3,500.
The current outstanding is 3,500. Let's say I will make fourth as vendor payment. This is not advance payment, this is a normal payment. Let's say Dell paid 3,500 to DMart. Cash 3,500 to DMart. What will be the accounting entry? Same accounting entry.
Yes. DMart account to cash.
Whether it is advance payment or normal payment, it's a payment end of the day. It will be 3,500 and it will be 3,500. Now to take this amount into your vendor account, what we need to do? Where is your DMAT on the payment? Debit, credit?
Debit
Credit.
only, right?
Debit
Debit.
side.
So I'll take DMAT, debit 3,500. I'll go to my statement, vendor account, DMAT, debit 3,500. Correct? In short, this is your current status before making the account balance. This is your invoice. What is this 1500? Returns.
Returns.
What is this 3000?
Advance.
This is advance. And what is this 3500?
Payment.
This is
Liability.
payment. After this, if I close, my credit balance is 8000, my debit balance is also 8000. Correct?
Yes.
Your debit balance, your credit balance is becoming equal.
Yes.
Clear? Any doubt in this?
Sir, please correct me if I'm wrong. In the case of advance payment, it is an asset, right? So asset should be shown as in the debit side. So instead of DMAT account, can we mention like advance to DMAT account debit? Just because if
Advanced.
a person, yes, sir, yes,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
yes, sir. If a person is looking at the statement, then how can he differentiate between this vendor payment and vendor advance payment?
You will have a special GL indicator, you will have a different GL account tagged to it in your GL module. But in the vendor, it is a transaction. It will have a different reflection on your GL module. But on your accounts payable or on your vendor side, it will be the same with an indicator called special GL. If it is advance, it will have a special GL indicator. If not, no special GL indicator.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that is there only in SAP. Currently, we are not talking from SAP point of view. We are talking from a generic accounting point of view. In SAP, 100% the same thing you are going to do it. No change from SAP. We are going to replace terminology. We are going to see it from SAP screen, but otherwise, nothing is going to get affected, changed.
Like the same entries we will pass in SAP.
I'll
In
pass
both
the
the
same
cases.
entries for the same amount for the same account. Probably in the tomorrow's session, tomorrow night session, we'll have one vendor master created with business partner called DMAT. I'll post the same 4 entries. After posting each entry, I will run the report. Okay, after posting invoice, I'll show you the vendor balance. After posting credit memo, I'll show you the vendor balance. After posting advance, after posting payment, I'll show the vendor balance. Whatever we did here manually, everything I'll show you on SAP at each stage.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Clear?
Yes.
Now, these accounting entries are very, very important for you to remember. Okay, if you are purchasing, what is the accounting entry? If you are returning, what is the accounting entry? If you are making advance payment, if you are making vendor final payment. One point that you have to remember here in the invoice payment, whatever you are purchasing, relevant to your purchase, you have to pick the account. Okay, whenever you purchase,
Sir, while purchasing, like a freight charges is there, yeah, we can debit or
that comes
credit.
from PO.
Okay.
Okay, we are only talking from non-purchase order currently. When we are talking from PO, we will be talking about those points, freight, customs and
Okay.
all. Okay, so when you do a vendor purchase, this is an expense. Correct? Am I correct? Whenever you are purchasing, this is an expense, you are spending money.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, expense is of 2 types. One, capital expenditure. In short, what is this? CapEx.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
What is the second one?
Service.
revenue expense.
Operating.
Revenue
Operating
or
expense.
operating? Let's put
Operating
operating expenses. In short,
expense.
these are called
OPEX.
OPEX. Okay, one is your CAPEX, the other one is OPEX. In short, whenever you are purchasing something, when you tell to somebody as an accounting entry, you are going to tell purchase account debit, vendor account credit. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right? So don't tell purchase account debit, vendor account credit, especially in your interview. If you tell this, immediately you will get a cross question. Do we use purchase account in SAP? Did anybody see purchase account created in any accounting?
No.
No,
No, sir.
sir.
Nobody creates purchase account. Purchase account is only used when you are studying your intermediate BCom commerce and all. No company will create purchase account, because if you put purchase account, nobody knows what you purchased. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I put purchase account, I don't know what is purchased. So instead, your purchase is of two types. Either you have purchased something related to capex or something related to opex. If it is opex related, if it is capex related, when you call something as capex, if it is a balance sheet account, you call it as opex if it is P&L account. Correct?
Yes.
Whatever you are purchasing, if that purchase item goes to balance sheet, call it as capex. If that purchase item goes to P&L, call it as opex.
Yes.
Okay, if I am purchasing some stationery related item. Now, why am I purchasing stationery related items? To use for my daily office purpose, maybe staplers, printing papers, pens, notebooks, diaries, yes, no, tissue papers.
Yes, sir.
These are all the day-to-day usage purpose I have purchased from DMart. Now, this is called as your operating expenses. Now, you will have to identify to which account you have to book this expense, which operating expense. Let's say you identified office and administration expenses or stationery expense account. Put a debit to the respective account. Even when you are telling to the interviewer, mention very clearly purchase account debit. When you mention purchase account, immediately mention whenever we purchase, this is an expense. We have two type of expenses, capex, opex. If you purchase any inventory related or fixed asset related, we will be debiting either inventory account or fixed asset account. If it is an operating related expense, we will be debiting the respective expense account. You must mention these 2 points if somebody is asking you vendor invoice accounting entry. Clear? But don't tell only purchase account and then stop there. If you tell purchase account, continue it so that you are aware that capex, opex, purchase account can hit your P&L, purchase account can hit your balance sheet also.
Yes.
Clear with these accounting entries? Any doubts?
No.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right? So I want all of you to go through this. I'll share this sheet now. I want everybody to read through these points, and when you read through these points, when we do it the same thing on SAP, there is no point of confusion for anybody. Even if I put only the T codes, even if I show the transaction code screen, you will be able to do on your own. You don't need my explanation to show the config. So that is possible only when you understand what we are discussing, what we have written on the Excel sheet.
Yes.
Right? So I did not mention T code anywhere. I am not going to write also. Right?
Yes.
Do not focus on the T codes, focus on the process. If somebody is asking, if you go with T codes, you will get stuck unnecessarily because of your T code. It's easy to remember this much big line, but it's very difficult to remember those 4-digit transaction code. Am I correct?
Yes.
It's difficult to
Correct, sir.
remember T codes for anybody, but it's very easy to remember this because here you will find a logic. In T code, there is no logic, there is no process.
Yes.
Upfront, you can tell I forgot the T code. Nothing wrong in it. Nobody will tell you, nobody will scold you if you tell you forgot the T code.
Yes.
But you cannot tell I forgot the steps. I know the T code, but I don't know what we do in T code. Who wants that?
Yes.
Can I say that I know where we do it, but I don't know what we do in that T code? I cannot say that.
Yes.
But if I say we will have to create a tolerance group for vendor, I know this is mandatory to post any vendor transaction. But I don't remember where we create this tolerance group. Accepted everywhere. Globally, it is accepted. Because it is also known to everybody that you are going to go to Google, put vendor tolerance T code in SAP. It will give you OBA3 or OBA2, correct?
Yes, sir.
So always try to go in a right way, so that even if you are telling half information, the other person will be convinced with your half information. All right, so I'll share this sheet now. Read through this. In the evening sessions that we are going to have from tomorrow onwards, in fact from today onwards, nothing is straightforward. Everything we will try to understand conceptually, and then we will do it in SAP. Here we will not be doing the detailed configuration. Here we will only experimenting. Here we are only trying to understand what is what, so that you will be in a position to talk confidently in your project, in your interview, to anybody that you approach. Clearer? Tomorrow when I show this, I am not going to explain what configuration we are doing. I am going to explain how we are bringing this scenario in SAP. We are not going to learn in the evening session how to create vendor account group. All this we will be doing in our regular session morning. Okay. These sessions are exclusively to focus on your business process understanding, exclusively to make sure that you are confident enough to explain to the any person. Your first target is that when you talk to your interviewer in any interview, you have to receive a positive feedback. First point. Second point, you have to have your satisfaction. Yes, I have attended, I have given my best, I am happy with my interview. Whether you get selected or rejected, that is not going to affect you. To reach that level, you have to understand at this level in the first phase. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, let
Yes.
me stop this recording.